Hello and welcome to my Yu-Gi-Oh channel. So today we're looking at some new cards coming out of Selection Pack 10, and they're supposed to be supporting some of the older archetypes. The first card is Heretic Heavenly Dragon Overlord of Heliopolis. It's a rank 8 light attribute dragon type Xyz effect monster with 3000 attack and 2400 defense. It has 2 level 8 monsters as its Xyz materials. And once per turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card among your cards on the field, in your graveyard and or your banished cards, as a quick effect you can detach one material from this card to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. This card is really useful if you've already got some kind of setup in your graveyard, or you've done something where you need certain cards. It prevents your opponent from being able to access those cards at least twice, and the stat lineup on this card is quite fair for it. The next card is Heretic Seal of Creation. It's a normal spell card with the effect you can only use either this card's name's first or second effect per turn, and only once at turn. 1. Target 1 Dragon Xyz monster you control. Special summon from your extra deck 1 Heretic Xyz monster with a different original name than that monster you control by using it as material. This is treated as an Xyz summon. Transfer its materials to the summon monster, and 2. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 Heretic monster in your graveyard and special summon it in defense position. This is really good because this is able to go straight into a different Heretic Xyz monster by just using it as material. There's no conditions to it. It doesn't have to be a specific level. It just has to be of the set. It just has to be a Dragon Xyz monster, and then you go into Heretic monster. So there's flexibility to run dragon types alongside just general Heretic monsters. And of course, being able to recover one of your Heretic monsters by getting rid of this card means you can go into one of the link monsters, or you can go into another Xyz monster if you want. And here we've got a reprint of Heretic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. So that's the link monster that I was covering as well. The next card we've got is Necros of Adren. It's a level 10 water attribute warrior type ritual effect monster with 3300 attack and 3200 defense. You can ritual summon this card with any Necros ritual spell. It must be special ritual summoned without using any level 10 monsters. You can only use this card's name's first and second effects once per turn each. 1. You can discard this card, tribute up to 2 Necros monsters from your hand and or field, and if you do, send the same number of Necros cards from your deck to the graveyard. And 2. When a monster effect is activated as a quick effect, you can tribute 1 monster from your hand or field, negate the activation, and if you do, banish that card. For starters, this card is incredibly powerful. It's very balanced for its attack and defense. It can be summoned from any Necros ritual spell, so there's the flexibility from that side of it. The downside is you can't just trade in one level 10 monster. It does have to be a combination of monsters. So you can go with a level 6 and a level 4, 2 level 5s, a level 3 and a level 7, a level 2 and a level 8, a level 1 and a level 9. Those are the combinations that you've got. So there is that aspect, or you could go further, but why would you want to be risking using 3 monsters of various levels to go into something like this? The second part, the first effect to discard this to get tribute up to 2 Necros monsters from your hand or field means you are putting yourself in quite a disadvantage, but you are sending Necros cards from your deck to the graveyard. So any of them which has a graveyard effect to be able to recover could be enough to extend your lead if you want to. Having that flexibility means you can choose any of those cards. So long as it's Necros, it's fine to use. And of course, the secondary effect is quite decent as well. It's a quick effect, so it can be used during either turn to be able to get rid of a card, a monster from your hand or field to shut down one of your opponent's monstrous effect. And instead of it going to the graveyard, it gets banished. That is an amazing effect because often cards that are banished don't tend to have follow-up effects. whereas those sometimes that end up in the graveyard do have additional effects anyway, so that's where the issue lies. That provides this card with a lot more flexibility to it and makes it a lot more desirable. As a reprint as well, we've got Necros of Adren. The original one came out of the Secret Forces and was a very expensive card if you picked it up during that point. You've got Necros of Kaleidoscope as well. And we've got a new Fairy Tale monster. It's Fairy Tale Rocker. It's a level 4 light attribute spellcaster effect monster. It's got 1,850 attack and 1,000 defense. You can only use this card's name's first effect once per turn. When this card is normal summoned, you can have your opponent gain 500 life points, then have them look at the top 3 cards of your deck and choose one of them for you to add to your hand. Also shuffle the rest back into the deck. And 2, if this card battles before damage calculation, you can send this card to the graveyard. I am a little confused about the utility of this card. It is bizarre, to say the least. When I think of it, your opponent is gaining life points. Yes, they do. You do get to, have a card added to your hand, but your opponent is going to look at the 3 cards, so they get the information on those cards, and they have the information of what you're going to be drawing into for your next 2 turns, assuming that you don't shuffle your deck or no effects force you to shuffle your deck. And they're going to give you the weakest card, so they're getting life points back, and they're going to give you the thing that's going to put you at the biggest disadvantage. You're giving them so much knowledge through this effect, it's not even worth running. For the fairy tales, it's got to be the weakest. I don't like being that cruel, but it's definitely the weakest. The next card is Fairy Tale. It's a continuous spell card, and you can only use this card's name's first effect once per turn. 1, you can reveal one spellcaster monster in your hand that has 1,850 attack, and a name different from the face-up monsters you control. Immediately after this effect resolves, normal summon or set that monster. And 2, each turn, the first time you would take battle or effect damage while you control a spellcaster monster with 1,850 original attack. You do not. For some reason, I don't consider this card necessarily a fairy tale based card. My first association is with the familiar possessed monsters. They all have that stat line for their attack anyway, and they're all spellcasters. So this can work just as easily with that card, those cards, as they do with fairy tale monsters. Being able to normal summon additionally on your turn is always a good idea. It gives you a little bit more advantage. The problem with that is adding to your field presence isn't always a good idea if it means it's going to sacrifice what you've got in your hand. And if your opponent has understanding of what you're running, they're really not going to be threatened by this. Secondary effect of this, once per turn, not taking effect of battle damage. It's okay, but you need to control a spellcaster monster, so if your opponent is doing some battle damage, chances are they won't, once they crash through a 1,850 attack monster, it's only going to be 1,000 or 2,000 points of damage at most, really. It's not worth even triggering the effect for what you're going to receive from it. And the next card is Time Thief Double Barrel. It's a rank 4 dark attribute psychic exceeds effect monster. I think this is the third of the Time Thief monsters, and that's an exceeds monster. It has a balanced attack and defense of 2,200 each, and it requires 2 level 4 monsters to summon. You can only use this card's name's effect once per turn. 1, when your opponent activates a card or effect as a quick effect, you can attach up to 3 different types of materials from this card, then apply the following effects depending on what was detached. Monster, this card gains 400 attack. Spell, take control of one face-up monster your opponent controls until the end phase, but for the rest of this turn, the taken monster cannot declare attacks or activate its effects. And 3, negate the effects of one effect monster on the field for the rest of this turn. My biggest issue with this is, unlike Time Thief Redoer, it's not able to attach its own materials, so it's reliant on other monsters and other abilities to do that for it. The general effect that you're going to get off just by having this card is the monster effect to gain 400 attack. Honestly, you know, even if you're doing this twice, okay, you've got a 3000 attack monster, big deal. Your opponent can just use a spell or trap or a monster effect to get rid of this anyway. The spell effect is nice because it's like a brain control, without the life point cost, obviously. It does take your opponent's face-up monsters, so depending on what they're running, it could be an issue. But those monsters can be tributed, they can be used for Xyz, Synchro, various other forms, Ritual, Fusion, whatever you prefer, whatever your deck's running, which is also probably the best of the effects in my opinion. And the final effect, the trap one, to negate the effects of one effect monster on the field for the rest of the turn. Again, not a bad ability, but I think the middle one with the spell is the best. It can be useful in different situations, but, you know, if your opponent isn't really running traps or things aren't really going your way, it's not really going to make that big of a difference. And of course, the last card, which is also a reprint, is Time Thief Redoer itself. So what do you guys think of these cards? Is there anything in here you particularly like? Is there anything you want to pick up? Or do you think they're all quite useless? Whatever you think, leave those comments down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily Yu-Gi-Oh content.